Here's an expanded version of the first keynote. The power of words in the style of Jonathan Cahn. Words are not mere sounds that fade into the air, nor are they simple letters written on a page. They are alive. They have weight. They have power. They create. They shape. They destroy. And they resurrect. The universe itself began with words. Let there be light. And there was light. The heavens, the earth, the sea, and all that exists came into being by the utterance of words. And if the universe was birthed by words, then words hold within them the essence of creation. But just as words create, words also bring destruction. They bring death. Consider the ancient times, the first deception, the first fall. It did not come by force, nor by sword, nor by chains. It came through words, a whisper in the garden, a subtle twisting of truth, a question that planted doubt. Did God really say? Those 4 words carried the power to alter human history, to break a covenant, to bring sin, sorrow, and suffering into the world. They did not cut like a blade, but they wounded the soul of man, severing him from the divine. One lie, one deception, and death entered where life once reigned. But this is not just history, it is a law, a principle. Words continue to shape the destiny of individuals, nations, and civilizations. The rise and fall of empires, the turning of hearts, the course of history, all have been determined by words. A ruler speaks and armies move. A decree is written and nations are bound by it. A man speaks falsely and another is condemned. Words are not mere breath, they are forces, setting events into motion long after they are spoken. Consider the power of a single declaration. A nation stands before an unseen future, and a leader speaks, "We will be free." And suddenly the chains begin to break. A people long in darkness hear the words, "Let my people go," and the waters part, leading them into a new destiny. But the opposite is also true. A ruler stands before the people and proclaims death, "Destroy them," and the people obey. Genocide, persecution, destruction, all begin with words. The greatest evils of history did not begin with war, but with words. A speech given in anger, a decree written in arrogance, a whisper in the courts of power. It is words that stir the hearts of men to do what they would not do otherwise. It is words that give justification for evil, that ignite revolutions, that turn brothers into enemies. Words are more powerful than weapons. A sword can kill a man, but words can kill generations. Look at the world today. Words are being spoken, declarations are being made, and judgments are being cast. The words of leaders shape the policies of nations. The words of false teachers corrupt the souls of many. The words of the media stir fear, division, and deception. And through these words, a culture is being transformed, not toward righteousness, but toward destruction. What was once unthinkable is now embraced. What was once sacred is now defiled. And how did it happen? Through words. Think of the child who is told from a young age that they are worthless. Those words shape their reality, shaping their choices, their beliefs, their very existence. They carry the weight of death upon them. A generation is being raised under the curse of false words. Words that tell them there is no meaning, no purpose, no truth. They are told that evil is good and good is evil. And these words are not without consequence. They shape the minds of the young, preparing them for a future void of righteousness. But it is not only the words spoken aloud that hold power, it is also the words left unspoken. When truth is silenced, when the righteous refuse to speak, when those who know the way remain silent in the face of deception, then destruction is given free rein. The greatest atrocities were not only committed by those who spoke evil, but also by those who refused to speak against it. And so we stand at the precipice of a great turning. Words are being spoken that bring death. Lies are being declared as truth. Darkness is being called light. And if words created the world, then the words being spoken now are shaping the world that is to come. The question remains, who will speak life? Here's an expanded version of the second keynote. The serpent's deception, in the style of Jonathan Cahn, In the beginning there was a voice that spoke, and through it all things came into being. Light was separated from darkness, the waters from the land, and life was formed out of nothingness. It was the voice of truth, the voice of the Almighty, and in that voice there was no shadow, no deception, only purity and righteousness. But then came another voice, a voice that did not create but corrupted, a voice that did not give life but brought death. It was the voice of the serpent. In the midst of paradise, where there was no pain, no suffering, no death, the enemy did not come with a sword nor with an army. He did not need to use force. He needed only to speak. Did God really say? With that one question, he planted a seed of doubt in the heart of man. It was not an outright denial, nor an open rebellion, but a whisper, a subtle twisting of the truth. And from that whisper, the fall began. The serpent did not create sin. He did not need to. All he had to do was take that which was true and bend it. He spoke not of lies, but of distortions. He told the woman that she would not surely die, that her eyes would be open, that she would be like God, knowing good and evil. And in those words, there was a half-truth. Her eyes were open. She did know good and evil, but she also knew shame, sorrow, and death. What seemed like wisdom was in fact the path to destruction. What seemed like enlightenment was in truth the way to the grave. And so it has been from the beginning. The enemy does not appear as a warrior, but as a voice. His weapons are not swords, but words. His battlefield is not of flesh and blood, but of minds and hearts. And his strategy has never changed. He whispers, he questions, he twists. And those who listen fall. This is the nature of deception. It does not come as an obvious evil, but as something that appears good, reasonable, even desirable. No one embraces destruction knowingly. No one desires their own ruin. The deception must be clothed in light, in wisdom, in promises. The words of the enemy are not spoken in harshness, but in smooth persuasion. They appeal to pride, to desire, to the longing for power and knowledge. And so it was not just Eve who was deceived, nor was it only Adam who fell. The deception has continued through every generation, through every nation, through every people. The enemy has spoken into the hearts of kings and rulers, of prophets and teachers, of common men and children. He has whispered in the ears of emperors, leading them to war. He has spoken in the chambers of governments, leading them to pass laws against righteousness. He has whispered in the halls of education, turning minds against truth. And he has spoken through the voices of false prophets, leading many astray. Consider the movements of history. There have been empires built on the words of deception, promises of utopia, of power, of a new order. They declared themselves to be enlightened, to be progressive, to be the architects of a better world. But behind the words was a darker purpose. The revolutions that promised freedom led to oppression. The leaders who proclaimed justice brought persecution. The teachers who spoke of wisdom led millions into darkness. And in every case, it began with words. Words that seemed good, words that seemed right, but words that carried the seed of destruction. It is the same today. The whisper of the serpent has not ceased. It has only changed its language. The same deception that brought death into the garden is now spoken through the voices of the age. The enemy does not need a sword when he has a screen, a microphone, a platform. He does not need to appear when his words can be broadcast to millions. He does not need to force men into bondage when they will willingly walk into it, believing they are walking into freedom. And what is his message now? It is the same as it was in the beginning. Did God really say? Did he really say that there is only one way to truth? Did he really say that righteousness is absolute? Did he really say that certain things are sin? Did he really say that there is judgment? And so, just as in the garden, the world listens to the whisper. They take what is clear and make it uncertain. They take what is truth and call it relative. They take what is sin and call it good. And just as in the beginning, the result is death. The enemy's deception is not just for the world, it's for the people of faith as well. He does not need to attack openly if he can work from within. He whispers to those in the pulpits, to those in the pews, to those who once stood firm. He tells them that the word must change, that it must conform, that it must be reinterpreted. He tells them that love is greater than truth, that acceptance is greater than righteousness, that compromise is wisdom. And so many who once held to the truth now hold to a lie, and they do not even realize they have fallen. But the deception does not stop with words alone, it moves to action. Once the lie is believed, it becomes law, it becomes culture, it becomes the foundation of a people. The serpent's words in the garden led to exile. The serpent's words today are leading to destruction. Nations that once stood for truth now stand against it. Societies that once honored righteousness now mock it. And the deception does not only corrupt, it judges. Those who once believed the lie find themselves enslaved by it. What they once embraced as freedom becomes their chains. And yet, through it all, the whisper continues. It is not shouted, it is not forced. It is simply spoken. And those who hear it, believe it. Those who believe it, repeat it. Those who repeat it, enforce it. And so deception grows and truth is cast down. And all of it began not with force, not with war, not with violence, but with words. The serpent speaks and the world listens. And the result is death. Here's an expanded version of the third keynote, the modern curse of speech, in the style of Jonathan Cahn. The world was shaped by words, and the world is being reshaped by words even now. But no longer do words only speak truth. No longer do they only bring life. Words have been twisted, perverted, and corrupted. And now, words are bringing death. Not just to individuals, but to entire cultures, to nations, to civilization. The words of today have become a curse upon the earth. In the ancient days, the prophets warned that a time would come when good would be called evil, and evil would be called good, when truth would be thrown down into the streets and trampled underfoot. That time is now, and it is all happening through words. What was once unthinkable is now declared righteous. What was once sacred is now ridiculed and despised. And what was once evil is now celebrated, defended, and enforced. There was a time when words had meaning, when truth was truth and a lie was a lie, when right and wrong were clear. But now, meaning has been stripped away. Words have been emptied, rewritten, redefined. They no longer serve truth, but an agenda. They no longer reflect reality, but create illusions. And those illusions are leading the world into destruction. A child is born, yet the world refuses to call them what they are. The most basic truth, the reality of male and female, is now treated as a matter of opinion. The words that once held meaning are now said to be fluid, to be interchangeable, to be without definition. And what happens when words lose meaning? Reality is lost. The foundation of truth is shaken. A civilization built on shifting sands cannot stand. It is not only truth that has been twisted, but morality. There was a time when sin was called sin, when darkness was recognized as darkness. But now new words are spoken, words that justify, that excuse, that distort. Sin is no longer sin. It is called freedom, self-expression, identity, even love. And righteousness is no longer righteousness. It is called intolerance, bigotry, oppression. Those who stand for truth are cast as villains. Those who stand against it are praised as heroes. And these words are not only spoken in the halls of power, but in the hearts of the people. They are spoken in the schools, in the universities, in the media, in entertainment, even in the pulpits. The voices that once declared truth now declare deception. The leaders who once defended morality now tear it down. The teachers who once taught wisdom now teach confusion. And the preachers who once called for repentance now call for compromise. How did this happen? Through words. Lies were spoken long enough that they became accepted. Deception was repeated often enough that it became normal. The words of the serpent have been broadcast over the nations. And now entire peoples are under a spell of deception, of delusion, of destruction. Look at history. When words are twisted, when truth is replaced with lies, when morality is overturned, judgment follows. It happened in the ancient days. It happened in the days of Noah, when wickedness filled the earth, when the words of men were filled with corruption and rebellion. It happened in the days of Israel, when the prophets warned that a nation that turned from truth would face destruction. It happened in the days of Rome, when a civilization that embraced sin above righteousness collapsed from within, and it is happening now. A civilization cannot survive when its words are corrupted. A nation cannot stand when truth is cast aside. And yet the world continues down the path of deception, blind to where it leads. The words spoken today are not just words. They are pronouncements, declarations, judgment. They are shaping the future. And the future they are shaping is one of destruction. Words have power. The words of the righteous build up, but the words of the wicked tear down. The words of truth bring life, but the words of deception bring death. And right now, the world is being led by words of death. And yet the deception is so deep that many do not even see it. They do not recognize that the words they repeat, the slogans they chant, the doctrines they embrace are not their own. They are echoes of the serpent's whisper. They are the words of ancient deception repackaged for a modern world. The words of rebellion spoken in the garden are now spoken in the streets, in the courts, in the schools, in the pulpits. The words of defiance spoken at Babel are now spoken through the screens, through the airwaves, through the mouths of leaders. The words that led to the fall are leading to the fall again. And the people welcome it. They embrace the words that bring death. They celebrate them. They enforce them. They demand that others speak them, and those who refuse are cast out, silenced, condemned. The world has reached a point where it no longer tolerates truth. It cannot bear to hear it. And so the words of life are silenced and the words of death reign. But what happens to a civilization that speaks words of death? What happens to a people who call down curses upon themselves? They will receive what they have spoken. The words of deception will not protect them. The words of corruption will not save them. The words that they have embraced will turn against them. A culture that declares war on truth will be destroyed by its own lies. A nation that silences righteousness will be consumed by its own wickedness. And yet the people do not see it. They march forward believing they are progressing, believing they are enlightened, believing they are building a new world. But they are walking toward judgment. They are walking toward destruction. The words they speak are sealing their fate. And the warnings have gone out. The voices of truth have called out, pleading for repentance, for a return to righteousness. But the world does not listen. It mocks, it scoffs, it silences. It rejects the words of life and chooses the words of death. And so the modern curse of speech is this, that the world has chosen to speak its own judgment into existence. That the words of today are paving the way for the fall of tomorrow. That the lies spoken today will bring the destruction of a nation, of a people, of a generation. And unless the world turns, unless the deception is broken, unless the words of truth are spoken once more, the path will not change. The judgment will come. The words of death will bring what they have always brought, death. Here's an expanded version of the fourth keynote, the call to speak life, in the style of Jonathan Cahn. If words bring death, then words can also bring life. If lies destroy, then truth restores. If deception leads a people into darkness, then the proclamation of righteousness can call them back into the light. From the beginning, the power of words has shaped the world. But the world now stands at a crossroads, and the question is this: who will speak life? In the days of the prophets, a single voice was often the only thing standing between a nation and its destruction, a voice crying out in the wilderness, calling the people to turn back before it was too late. And that voice was never welcome. It was hated. It was rejected. The people did not want to hear it. They had already chosen the path of deception, and truth was an offense to them, but still the voice called out. Still the words were spoken. Still the warnings were given. And for those who heard, for those who turned, life was given. So it is now. The world is being shaped by words of death, but it is not beyond redemption. The words of deception have filled the air, but they do not have the final word. The voices of falsehood are loud, but truth remains. And the call now is this: speak life, speak truth, speak righteousness, even when the world rejects it, even when the words of life are silenced, even when they are ridiculed, even when they are outlawed. Speak, for there is a battle in the unseen realm, a battle of voices. The words of darkness seek to drown out the words of light. The voices of deception seek to silence the voices of truth. But darkness has no power over light. A single candle can pierce the deepest night. And a single voice, anointed with truth, can shake the foundations of a nation. Consider the power of a single word. When the prophet stood before the king and declared, "Thus says the Lord," the course of history was changed. When the apostles stood before rulers and proclaimed the truth, empires trembled. When men and women, armed with nothing but the word, stood against tyranny, kingdoms fell. Because truth, when spoken in boldness, has power, but truth must be spoken. It cannot remain silent. Silence in the face of deception is surrender. Silence in the presence of lies is complicity. A generation that refuses to speak truth is a generation that welcomes its own destruction. And yet many remain silent. They see the world crumbling around them, but they say nothing. They watch as evil is called good and good is called evil, but they remain still. They fear the cost. They fear rejection. They fear persecution. But what is the cost of silence? It is greater than the cost of speaking. What happens to a people who refuse to stand for truth? They are overtaken. They are conquered. They are enslaved. The silence of the righteous is the victory of the wicked. The silence of truth is the triumph of deception. And yet, there are still those who hesitate. They say, "What can one voice do?" They say, "The world is too far gone." They say, "There is nothing we can do to stop what is coming." But they forget the power of words. They forget that one voice can change the course of history. One voice can set a fire. One voice can turn the tide. Consider the days of Nineveh, a city filled with wickedness, a people lost in darkness. And yet a single man, reluctant though he was, spoke the word of truth, and the city was saved. Had he remained silent, had he refused to speak, judgment would have come. But because he obeyed, life was given. Or consider the days of Israel under oppression. When the people cried out for deliverance, a man stood before Pharaoh and declared, "Let my people go." At first, nothing changed. Pharaoh hardened his heart. The oppression grew worse, but the words were spoken again and again, until finally the word shattered the chains and the people were freed. The world now stands at the edge of judgment. The deception has spread. The darkness has deepened. The words of death have been spoken, and they are bringing their fruit. But the window has not yet closed. The hour is late, but it is not yet over. And the question remains, who will stand? Who will speak? For the one who speaks truth stands against the tide. They will be hated. They will be rejected. They will be attacked. But they will not be alone, for they do not speak in their own power, nor in their own authority, but in the authority of truth itself. And truth cannot be defeated. Truth cannot be destroyed. It can be silenced for a time, but it will rise again. And the voices of righteousness are needed now more than ever. The world is filled with confusion. People are lost, wandering in the darkness, deceived by the lies spoken over them. But many are searching. Many are longing for something real, something unshakable. And when they hear truth, when they hear words of life, something awakens within them. It is no accident that deception has grown so strong in this hour. It is no accident that words of death have filled the world. The enemy knows that his time is short. He knows that the hour is urgent. And so he seeks to silence the truth while he still can. He seeks to drown it out, to overwhelm it, to make it seem powerless. But truth is never powerless. It does not depend on numbers. It does not depend on popularity. It does not depend on human approval. Truth is truth no matter how many reject it. Light is light no matter how deep the darkness. And the moment one voice speaks it, the deception begins to break. So now is the time. Now is the hour. There is no room for hesitation. There is no time for passivity. The battle is upon us. The voices of deception are shouting their lies. The words of death are being spoken over nations. And if the righteous remain silent, the curse will prevail. But if truth is spoken, if words of life are proclaimed, then the darkness will be pierced. The deception will be exposed. The captives will be set free, and the curse will be broken. So the call goes out, speak. Do not remain silent. Do not hide. Do not retreat. Stand, declare, proclaim. Speak words of life in a world of death. Speak words of truth in a world of lies. Speak words of righteousness in a world of corruption. And the words you speak will not be in vain. They will go forth. They will take root. They will bear fruit. And they will bring life.